You're welcome. Confession time with Beto.
Oh, he's going to a priest?
Beto. Vito Beto.
He is
right?
the priest,
He's the priest?
Can news be without a point of view?
Yes.
CBS says it can.
Man.
Yes.
Man. And Justice Department on Eric Gardner. We're going to go there.
Oh.
Ooh, we're going to talk about that.
What about Trump?
We got a little intersectionality in the studio with Andrew Klavan.
Hey!
Andrew Klavan is in Moscow. Sit next to me.
Wait, you said something about intersectionality.
Yeah, how'd that work?
Something like that. Well, welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, Gabe, it's good to be here with you guys. And we want to just jump right in this. We got a full show today. Yeah. Andrew's going to be on the show the whole time.
If you don't know who Andrew Klavan is, what is wrong with you people?
Come on.
What's wrong with you people?
There you go.
Andrew Klavan is the author of such internationally best-selling crime novels as True Crime, which was filmed by Clint Eastwood, Don't Say a Word, filmed and starring Michael Douglas.
Are you best friends with Clint?
Oh, are you kidding? Me and Clint are like this.
Stephen King called him the most original novelist of crime and suspense since Cornell Woolrich.
Whoever he is, right?
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
I know Stephen King.
His most recent work of fiction is a serial fantasy thriller podcast, Another Kingdom. And you've been releasing it on podcast and then hard copy.
That's it. Podcast, and then a novel comes out later in the year.
Okay, and it's on iTunes list of top 100 podcasts. It's going to be published as a novel trilogy. The third volume's coming out this fall.
The first volume just came out, and the second one will be next year, and then one after that.
There's plenty more where that came from.
Okay.
I love this stuff.
That's a gigantic bottle.
I
don't know about that.
I feel like we're sinning.
Andrew's nonfiction includes a memoir of his religious journey, The Great Good Thing, which I have here.
I introduced him today at Called Conference, and I said the good great thing.
That was it was one of the worst introductions I've had. It was like he'd been sitting with me for an hour. He hardly knew who I was.
I butchered it all, and I got on his Wikipedia. He said, go to the Wikipedia page, and I'm like, this is a bunch of gibberish. And so I just went up and did a bunch of gibberish.
Welcome to our life.
It is.
Andrew also has a book of satire, the Lefties Dictionary.
Yeah,
did I pronounce that right?
Hard to get.
His essays.
Ask him for a PDF. He'll send it to you.
His essays and op-eds on politics, religion, movies, literature have appeared in pretty much everything and everywhere. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. He's also a screenwriter.
Yep.
Andrew wrote the screenplay to A Shock to the System, which starred Michael Caine, One Missed Call, which starred Edward Burns, and Gosnell.
Yep. That's the latest one.
The trial of America's biggest serial killer, starring Dean King.
How's that doing right now?
It did okay. You know, it was a non-budget film. It was a film where they raised the money online. For that, I thought it looked great, and I think it did really well.
And now it's added to his bio. He's now been on Cross Politic.
Yeah.
We'll put that in Wikipedia, too.
It's Wikipedia. Just type it in there.
Right? Actually, it's their second time on Cross Politic, but this is the first time in studio.
Yeah.
But he was with us early on.
That's right. I don't even know why.
We were like,
because I thought it was such a great idea for a show. I didn't know you guys were doing it.
So if you remember 2 years ago, I reached out to you on Twitter and said I want to get you on the show for the good great thing, and you actually responded to my tweet. I think this is before you were big, and he's like, I need an interview, so I'm gonna come on Cross Politics. So he emailed me, and I was like, shut up, and he got back to me. And then after the show, if you guys remember, we asked Andrew if he would give us a little plug. You wrote us a little plug for our website that we still actually have on our website.
There you go. What a guy.
I can't even remember what the plug is, but it's a really nice plug.
Serious.
It was really good. And then I did a follow-up. You know how I work with people. I slowly get them to like me.
I don't think it's working.
It's really slow.
That's why Gabe's post-millennial. He's like,
and then I have to be. And then I emailed him. I said, hey, can I get Ben Shapiro on the show? And then he connected me with Ben, and then we got Ben on the show after that.
You're a gentleman in a
really
scholar.
Or a scholar, right?
Also, just for events coming up, we have the Post-College Life Conference coming up here in Moscow on August 16th and 17th. There are
this is for people who've graduated college,
right, or at least tried to, and we got talks on business, how to buy a car.
Ooh.
I'm going to be speaking a couple of times.
What are you going to be speaking about?
I can't remember. It's going to be really great.
Yes.
Yeah. He's going to make post-college life great again.
I'm doing Life Between the Sexes.
Oh, good.
So,
good.
you know.
And then we're also
dealing with people from other planets.
We're going to be doing a panel on intersectionality.
Are we?
I'm just kidding. We're going to be doing a panel on identity and media.
Also, if you haven't joined the Cross Politic Fight Laugh Feast Network yet, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You too could be drinking your favorite beverage out of these Fight Laugh Feast Network pint glasses.
They're not just Presbyterian, they're Baptist too, so you can put water.
They don't discriminate.
Cool, whatever you want.
You can put Diet Coke in there.
Iced tea.
And also, we got new club member content that's in the portal for our club members on raising sturdy kids with Dr. Keith McCurdy.
That's right. It's awesome.
Raising sturdy kids, great content. So make sure you guys log in, enjoy that content, and join the club. These are on a limited.
When they're gone, they're gone.
Supplies last, yeah. And I'm sorry if you're the last one that didn't get one, but we got plenty of them right now, and I'm working on the process of mailing them all out to you guys. So please bear with me.
So if you're not there yet,
bear with me.
It's Gabe's fault.
Yeah, it's my child slave laborers helping me line up fold all the boxes, pack all the content, all that stuff. I know.
This is recorded.
Please, this isn't going on DirecTV. This is going on just on our podcast. All right. Yeah. So this past week, Joe Biden decided to finally start campaigning like a moderate. If you guys know, like all the progressive leftists have been polling Joe, and Joe's been apologizing left and right for his past legislation that he voted for and put together. He's been apologizing for late relationships that he's had in the past.
He used to think that the government shouldn't actually pay for abortions.
Yeah, that's right. He was for the Hyde Amendment.
He had to reverse that.
In 24 hours.
Yeah.
The one thing I appreciate that he did apologize for was for sniffing other women's hair. I was like, that was the only apology I might agree. I'm not supposed to do that. But he came out this past week defending Obamacare. And he said, if you like your health care, you can keep it.
You got to love Joe Biden.
Wait. We heard that before,
That's the worst defense for Obamacare ever. You remember when President Obama was campaigning for Obamacare, he said, if you like your doctor, you can keep it.
How'd that go?
No.
Didn't work out so well?
If you like your car, you can keep it.
Oh, thanks, boss.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
How about if you like your slave, can you keep it?
Ooh.
Gabe.
1857 all over again.
Yeah, here we are, Democrats defending whatever.
Yeah, Joe Biden. And so he defends Obamacare, and if you guys, but it's him campaigning as a moderate is what he's trying to do. Right.
Well, yeah, that's because all the polling just came out, and he's a little more ahead than what he thought.
Oh,
probably.
Really?
This is because we're in the middle of Hunger Games 2020.
It is time to walk away from the politics of the past and towards something totally different.
People are lining up for food. That's a good thing.
I'm a hugger, I'm a kisser, and I'm a little bit of a sniffer.
Raising the minimum wage does not hurt business, it grows business.
So f***ing proud of you guys.
I am Spartacus.
Never fails.
Now, Andrew, if you remember that scream, that was Howard Dean.
Howard Dean,
You remember that?
Oh, yeah, ended his career.
Exactly right.
So for those who've been following us, we every time we bring up the Democratic campaign, the 21, 22, what is it, 20, it's back to 19 now or
I don't
something?
know what it is anymore after them poll numbers.
Yeah. Our way of describing it is the Hunger Games. Hunger Games is socialists that need to the last socialist hasn't killed itself and it's standing.
Yeah.
And Knox put that little stinger together, and every time it just
oh man, it's still funny. Actually, it's getting more funny actually as we go along, because you just wait for the certain, exactly. Yeah. Also, Beto has gone to confession.
Yeah, he has.
Who are you confessing to?
What's Beto's nickname?
I said Vito Beto. So we tried to come up with a nickname for each one. Pinko Pete is Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, Commie Harris.
Kamala Harris. Yeah. Of course, Pocahontas. That's one just kind of a natural fit there.
One.
Yeah, that's
creepy. We go back between Sleepy and Creepy Biden.
Beta O'Rourke.
Beta.
No.
Beta. That's a good one.
Reaching. I don't know.
Incompetent Inslee. That's the governor over in Washington. That's
anyways, turns out he and his wife are descended from slave owners.
He did a little op-ed on himself.
He was like,
I need to confess this before the media finds out.
He's like, they're coming for me.
He gives a whole new meaning to the Me Too movement.
I'm going to Me Too myself.
He's just a whole new meaning to it.
Wasn't Obama descended from slaveholders?
Yeah,
I think so. I think so. But the whole thing. You keep saying intersectionality, but it's like I'm a victim too.
Yeah.
And he's defending reparations. So it's this weird sort of like, I'm a victim of my own family. And this is why we need reparations.
Well, it's a way too that, Joe didn't do it fast enough, but it's a way for things not to stick to you. So no one else can come out and dig out the dirt, and it's a way for him to protect himself from actually being stung by anything.
This is
to pay homage to the gods.
This is a modern.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Don't miss the fact that in secular politics, there's a deep religious current running through all of this. This is a form of justification.
Yep.
So you confess your sins so that you can be clean, so that you can be justified, so that you can be elected.
So,
right?
So, Klavan, you got any slave masters in your family?
My people were slaves in Egypt.
Right. Okay, you good, brother.
Did you get reparations for that?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a little model pyramid. It was just it's not much, but it looks nice on the shelf.
Okay. Also, CBS News president wants his broadcast to be completely trustworthy and without any point of view.
Who said this?
This is the president of CBS, Zorinsky. She just hired Nora O'Donnell.
Yeah, she's a stone leftist.
Yes. Right. That's what it says in my notes. Nora O'Donnell just became the next anchor of the brand-defining CBS Evening News. And this is the seat that was once occupied by Walter Cronkite, right?
Wow.
He's this sort of iconic voice and face for instant situations like the assassination of John F. Kennedy and Vietnam.
Traditional news, right?
Yeah.
Where there's facts.
And of course, O'Donnell was very excited to recount that she received a congratulatory phone call from Oprah, who told her the evening news is O'Donnell's supreme destiny.
And Oprah's absolutely neutral, baby.
Yeah, she shouted her abortion, didn't she?
That's how you know that CBS is about to deliver trustworthy broadcast without a point of view.
Well, it makes sense though, because right now Fox is the big guys on the block.
Yeah,
and no one's doing their numbers.
They're pulling the best. That's like having beer with phone with no beer. That's what that is.
What?
News with no point of view. Phone with no beer. I know. That's what I'm saying.
So you think that's
a great analogy.
You notice how we were trying to move on as fast as we could?
Andrew, I just want to say sorry right now.
You're trying to save him.
You're being good to help, man. That's why you're here.
I'm just watching you go down.
So you think that CBS is trying to is going after Fox?
Well, no one else is hitting that category. Everybody's got a form of biased news, but Fox has made you think by their marketing that they're fair and balanced. They talk to everybody and I think for the most part they're trying, but they're definitely slanted. But they've owned the fair and balanced narrative. No one has really owned that narrative like Fox, because Fox has had far many more people on the other side come on to their network, talk about it, and debate them. And it's
so they
hard.
actually have both sides.
They really do. And actually, Bill O'Reilly used to have, people wouldn't come on his show because they knew they had to actually give us some sort of standard for why they held their position. Yeah. And he would rip a lot of people apart. And so I think they've owned that throughout the years. And no one's been able to play in that field. And I think what they're seeing at MSNBC? MSNBC. Yeah. They're trying to say, well, what does it look like to get some of that money?
Well, this is CBS. This is actually CBS. That's actually making this right.
Oh, I'm sorry, CBS.
CBS.
But Fox also has the Bret Baier Show, which is the best news show on television. That 1 hour, what is called special report, is the most fair and balanced show. It's not Sean Hannity, who's obviously got a point of view. Yeah. It's not opinion journalism. It's got that panel at the end where people express their opinions, but in a very restricted way. That's great.
What's a broadcast without a point of view?
Well, it's like foam and no beer. That's exactly what it's like.
I thought of that.
I know you were thinking that right there.
How do I turn his mic?
But I think you can be more objective than these guys are being. Mm-hmm. There is. We used to, when I was a newsman, you made at least two calls, right, left, get the facts. You know, and so you could do that. Where in CBS up till now, and NBC certainly, it's just all leftism.
Yeah.
Right.
So best spin on this is that just means fair and balanced.
Yeah.
That would be the best spin. Of course, it's a little bit hard to take it seriously when you have the new anchor being congratulated by Oprah and she did a story with, what was the gal's name? I told you this I was earlier with Gayle King. They were featured on Hollywood Reporter, talking about the Parkland kids leading a revolution.
That's what I mean. That's not fair and balanced.
That doesn't seem like,
Gail is Oprah's best friend.
Pardon, what?
Yeah, that's right.
Oprah's best friend.
Pardon me if I'm a little cynical.
I lived next door to Oprah for About 10 years.
Oh,
I want you to
really?
Yes, in Montecito, California. I always figured that's why the fires would never come and get me, because the angels would come down and protect me, like from the forest fire. But every now and again, I would drive home and there'd be a guard on my street because Obama was at her house having a fundraiser. So,
Visiting.
There we go. Yeah.
So if you guys remember in 2017 when the whole Eric Garner thing went down, there's cops and Eric Garner was selling cigarettes on the street, and cops
illegally selling.
Horrible.
He didn't have a license.
So legalistic. And cops came and talked to him, and then they were going to arrest him, and then he, I think, resisted at some level, but it escalated to the point where the cops choked him out, and he died.
Yeah, he gasped, "I can't breathe." I can't breathe. And
the famous "I can't breathe," and he died.
That became kind of this iconic statement for the Black Lives Matter.
Last week, the Justice Department is decided not to bring federal charges against the police officer in that case.
Yeah, there's several things that were interesting about this. I actually had just honest questions. I wasn't sure I understood completely what was going on.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier, trying to figure it out. But so first of all, it's interesting that this is federal,
right?
Not
state. Justice Department.
Yeah, so it's not state. And it also says in the story that we were looking at that there is a New York PD investigation that's still pending.
Okay.
So the actual
there's some
NYPD
state or local charges still pending.
But there was also already a civil settlement with Garner's family. $5.9 million was paid by the city to the Garner family.
How, Sway?
What?
How?
They wrote a check. I don't know.
Yeah.
Civil suit.
But that was
insurance probably paid for it.
But that was a civil suit, and the civil suit found the police officer, Pantaleo.
That's how you say it.
I just said it.
Yeah.
He was found guilty of use of excessive force in the arrest.
Yeah.
In the civil suit, I don't know what's the status of any kind of criminal suit.
Well, see, normally the feds only come in if it's what they call a civil rights violation. People forget that most crimes, like murder, is a state crime.
Right.
It's the state that comes after you for murder. And the civil rights things were put in because in the South for a long time, you couldn't get convicted.
The states weren't compliant.
That's right. You couldn't get convicted for killing a black guy. So the feds would come in and say, well, you violated.
Right. So you have 14th Amendment and so on with civil rights legislation.
So I'm not sure that this is a civil rights violation. It sounds like the guy just used excessive force.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we were kicking around because on the one hand,
that's why the Justice Department wouldn't bring charges because they're saying this is no civil rights issue.
Yeah. And I think in order to demonstrate that, they would have to prove basically that the police officer used excessive force because he was black.
That's right. And even the Obama Justice Department would make a fuss about these things, but they almost never brought those federal charges because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the time, I mean, this case sounded very, very dubious. I mean, it sounds dubious. You choke a guy when he's selling cigarettes.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one that was in St. Louis, Michael Brown, the cop had a much better case, and the feds made a big fuss about it, but they didn't bring any charges.
Look, reach for my gun. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Like, I get that. Philando Castile, though, that one bothered me a lot. That was, for all intents and purposes, I was Philandro. You know, that bothered me. Yeah. What bothered me about this particular case too is that it took 5 years.
But our justice is slow in our nation.
But here, my thing, and I hate these cases because I don't think we can really get justice from them.
What do you mean?
$5.9 million to the family. Okay,
doesn't bring the guy back.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't replace your dad.
No, and I don't think that officers have the chance to tell the truth about the situation. If the police officer actually was able to say, yes, I did choke him, my intent was not to kill him, I feel horrible about this. I was trying to restrain him. I was trying to do my job. Look, this is what the laws are. If we don't like them, I think we should change it, but this is what I'm trying to do, and I made a mistake. No officer can actually come out and say he actually made a mistake doing something without getting his whole hind end fried off.
Right. Because that sets a precedent.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
well, not just a precedent, but he hangs himself in front of
the prosecuting attorney is going to have his insides out for that comment.
Yeah.
And so he can't actually, no real justice could be done. So if he comes out and tells the truth here, they're not going to meet it with the same amount. It's not going to be eye for eye and tooth for tooth. It's going to be overwhelmingly, now we're going to get justice for all the other 6 black guys that have nothing to do with this case.
Right. Because we live in a world that doesn't have a standard of justice.
Exactly. And so I feel like, if something really happened here and he was able to make that claim and we lived in a real justice standard of a world of America,
a real biblical
standard, a biblical standard of this, then okay, he made that, and the family can say, okay, now what does it look like to show restitution for what you did to him?
For someone who made a mistake versus someone who murdered.
Let's talk about what that really looks like outside of
And historically, I mean, this is where first degree, second degree, aggravated homicide, these manslaughter, these distinctions are actually rooted in biblical law.
Absolutely.
Right? So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there is distinctions made between somebody who hated his brother in his heart beforehand and killed him.
Sure.
And then there's an example given of an axe head flying off and it hits somebody. And it said basically, if he didn't hate his brother in his heart beforehand, there's no evidence of first
degree murder, basically.
Then the guy isn't charged with first degree murder and then has an opportunity to flee to a city of refuge where he can then make his case. Yeah. That's the root of these. I mean, our law system is rooted in these biblical principles.
Yeah. And by the way, that was actually the original sanctuary cities. Yeah. Right? That was what they were
cities
really
of refugees. Cities of refugees.
Not what they're doing now.
That's right.
More Across Politics when we come back. Andrew Klavan, the show. I want to hear more of what you got to say.
You're going to talk now.
Yeah, all right.
We let you off easy for that one.
More Across Politics next.
I'm out of here.
Sitting here enjoying the show.
I was kind of enjoying that conversation.
All right, well, the rapture's not happening. The world is not about to come to an end. What do we do now?
If everything's going to end in the next 10 years, then what you've done is you've put a set of training wheels on evangelical Christians. I'm not alone in all of this. This isn't an individual. We're not an army of one. There's a community at large here.
Jesus bought this city, my nation, my state with his blood. And so I'm working towards that.
He's still here.
He didn't leave.
He locked the door. I don't know.
He tried to move over to my side.
We got Tiny back there blocking the door. So.
Here we go. Welcome to Cross Politics.
No. Gabe. Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. And with us in the studio today, we are very grateful to have the one and only Andrew Klavan.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
It is a pleasure. It actually is.
Yeah,
really?
so...
that's nice. I'll give you my wallet later.
So, you're used to that.
So, Gabe, did Trump tweet anything this week?
Who are you talking about in your tweet about going back to their hometown?
Well, I didn't mention names, and I didn't do that, but I will tell you, with our country, and I think everybody in this audience, these are great manufacturers, great workers in our audience, too. They brought a lot of their workers here. If you're not happy here, then you can leave. As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way. A lot of people love it. But if you're not happy in the U.S., if you're complaining all the time, very simply, you can leave. You can leave right now. Come back if you want. Don't come back. It's okay, too. But if you're not happy, you can leave.
I don't think the message was, if you're not happy, you can leave, but it's something like that.
So this is what he actually tweeted. So this is July 14th. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly, second tweet, and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places which they came from, then come back and show us how, etc.
What's the time?
You done messed up, Aaron.
Hey, Aaron. What's the timestamp of that tweet?
It was
3:45.
That's what I want to know.
5:27 a.m.
So here's part of the thing is, like, Trump doesn't apologize,
right?
But he does make adjustments when he knows he kind of went a little too far, or kind of said it in a way that he didn't intend and it came off.
I want to ask.
So I think he's making adjustments.
What do you think Trump's doing?
Well, he's got a strategy, but he made a mistake at the same time.
Okay.
The mistake was using the phrase "go back where you came from," because that does have racist connotations.
It's a dog whistle.
If we're going to say that Ilhan Omar was wrong to say the Jews supporting Israel is all about the Benjamins, which dips into this anti-Semitic cliche, then it's wrong to say "go back where you came from." So he fixed it. You heard what he said. If you don't like it here, leave. which I agree with. I think we all agree. You don't like it. There's a plane leaving every 20 minutes. You can get out of the country.
Is that what he meant? Do you think that's what he meant?
Yeah, basically. But the strategy here, was Nancy Pelosi was in this cat fight with the axis of Sheevil, as they now call it. and what he wanted to do was he wanted to get the Democrats back on their side because he knows that they pay dividends. People look at them. They are ignorant. They are radical. They're socialist bordering on communist. And Ilhan Omar is this close to wearing like a suicide belt. That woman is
oh wow.
I mean, that woman she's raising money with people like CARE who have been connected to terrorism.
Muslim Brotherhood.
She has expressed, she once gave an interview where she said basically made moral equivalence between the United States, Britain, and the army, and Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think that, she has got a real problem on the Sharia side.
So what Joe Biden is in the Democratic race, Hunger Games 2020, you kind of have Pelosi with the what'd you call them?
The axis of Sheevil. It's not mine.
The young freshman representatives.
And here's the thing. Pelosi is just as radical as they are. She's just an old hand. She's a smart, canny, person who knows that they're making them look bad. So she's going to the so-called moderates in the field, and they support her.
Yeah.
They want these four off TV because they're ruining their chances of getting reelected in Trumpville, right? But Trump has just made it so they had to go and defend him. It actually was kind of brilliant in one way, but it was also, I worry that he's not expanding his base. This is my fear that he's.
In what way?
Well, because what voter who didn't vote for him the first time is going to hear that tweet and say, "Oh, now I get it. He's a jerk. Okay, I'll vote for him." I mean, the people who love him for his jerkiness because it fights back.
Yeah.
And the people who've rejected him for that, the people who've rejected him are not going to be converted if he doesn't kind of change his tone up a little bit. I'm thrilled that he's fighting these people because they're absolutely out of their minds. But I do worry that he continues to alienate women and people who didn't vote for him the first time.
I don't understand why he jumped into this in the first place, because you had Nancy Pelosi and the freshman 4, freshman 20, someone might call it, fighting with each other.
Yeah, but he didn't want that. He wants them all associated together.
But why? That was a good thing. He got infighting in the Democratic Party, and which means that distracts from Trump and what he's doing. He can do other things.
But when you have Nancy Pelosi and the entire party saying, "We defend these 4 women," then they're all in the same boat. And then people start to say, "Oh, they're all radicals."
They're all radicals.
Yeah,
which is good for re-election.
It was funny because as I'm watching this, in the press conference that they threw, they're sitting there, "This is a distraction," and I was like, "Yes, yes, please keep being distracted." I don't, my problem with Trump on this is that, hey, Trump, I like what you're doing. Keep saying all the crazy stuff you're saying, because if they're busy answering you and doing press conference, they ain't doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I need a couple more years to pass by where they ain't doing nothing until we can get them out. So you're doing great, boss.
He's good at what he does. There's no question about it.
But I have to agree with you when I heard that. Like, as somebody who's been told to, go back to where you came from, I heard that and was like, had a flashback in the middle of that. It was like, I don't think you want to say that there. I was on your team, but I kind of got a duck on that one.
I had the same feeling. I just thought, just not quite. Like if he had said, "If you don't like it, leave."
Yeah, right.
And I was trying to figure out why he was trying to unify him, because I know he threw Nancy Pelosi a bone. I just didn't know why. Because and if you do something like this, you got them all fighting. He came out hardcore for Nancy. Yep. Hey, y'all need to get behind Nancy, and so it seems like this is covering up his tracks of a unity that he's sharing somehow with Nancy.
Well, I think Nancy Pelosi must be ready to just blow her brains out. I think they're ready to wrestle the gun out of her hand, because what's her name, Rashida Tlaib, gets up and says, "We need impeachment now," which is like, don't throw me into the briar patch. As far as Trump is concerned, he'd love for them to impeach him.
Bring it. Bring it.
So I want to turn the corner here, because last week, Trump invited kind of all these kind of right-winger conservatives to the White House to talk about kind of deplatforming, what
social media
stuff. And he had some kooks in the crowd a little bit.
It's Trump.
Yeah.
They come with territory.
Alex Jones wasn't there.
Okay. He ain't nowhere.
I was going to say he's never
there. But this is something we've kind of been wrestling with just on our little show level, trying to figure out, how do we proceed kind of moving forward. And I know the Daily Wire has been talking about this. How are you guys kind of handling a lot of the either deplatforming or demonetizing
censoring
issues, the censoring?
Well, it's a real problem. And I think Trump did a really smart thing, because what he was sending a message to Zuckerberg and Jack over at Twitter. Yeah. He was saying to them, we may win. And if you do everything you can to stop us winning and then we win, you're not going to be happy campers, because then we're coming after you with some anti-monopoly laws and maybe some, law. Right now they operate as platforms, which means you can't sue Facebook if I go on and slander you. You can sue me, but you can't sue Facebook. If Facebook gets regulated as a publisher, which is what they are when they start to edit us, then you can sue Facebook for every single lie told about you on Facebook.
Yeah.
So what Trump is sending a message is, I may win. You don't want to mess with me. You don't want to try and stop me, because if you lose, I'm going to bust you.
So that's helpful. And the question I had with those, so are they currently more like a public utility?
I feel they are. I feel that they are virtually monopolies. I actually feel a lot of conservatives are like, oh, don't touch them. They're private industries. But how do you communicate with somebody without Google? How do you do a search without Google? And if Google is working their algorithms, and they are, so that anytime you search a conservative idea, Snopes comes up and says it's not, and lies and says it's not true. Well, then they are fiddling with the election more than the Russians ever could.
There's Yahoo.
Yeah, there's Yahoo.
There's DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, DuckDuckGo is actually pretty good.
Yeah. There's a few other. So in one sense, I don't know if it's a monopoly, only because there's a way for somebody who doesn't have, they can still create. Right. I can't go open up an oil company, but I can start a new tech company.
Yep.
Right? So I feel like in one sense, it's not a full monopoly in that way. I feel like we're just not ready or willing to do what it takes to build something that would compete.
Well, then there's the other side to it, that they are regulated as platforms. And again, that indemnifies them against lawsuits for the lies told on.
Right.
But the whole point about platforms like the phone company, you and I are talking, and the operator says, I don't like what you just said, Knox, you're off. You can't be on the phone. They can't do that.
I just had a moment.
It's always you.
The only thing that scares me about that, and I think I agree with you a little bit on this, is that I don't want to live in a world where that's a reality.
Yep.
So let's say they swallow the reductio. I don't want to live in that world where, now they're getting pinned up. They can actually be sued.
Or something you say.
I don't want that world to exist.
I hear you, but I feel that they need to be frightened into being fair. I didn't think they should have censored Alex Jones. I don't think they should censor anybody. Let it the ideas. I'm not afraid of these guys with their hateful ideas. We can take them.
I got to play the race card here.
Oh, okay. Then I'm going to play the libertarian card after you.
When I think about this is one of the things that bothers me. What they did with black culture and during the time of the civil rights too was, instead of saying, hey, let's open up a freer market, make the market more free to have competition, which I think we would have been able to compete there. Let's force everybody else to have to let them in. That ruined two things. It ruined the industry,
that's a good
and
point,
it ruined the people.
Yeah.
And so that to me seems like, well, if we force this, instead of saying, hey, let's not threaten them. Let's make it so that we can make other tech companies thrive. How do we do that?
This is like Clarence Thomas when he got out of Harvard, I think it was, put on his diploma, he put 5 cents on it because that's what it was worth after affirmative action, because nobody believed that he was brilliant enough to get through Harvard, which he clearly was. He would have gotten through Harvard any day of the week. So, it kind of ruined.
Are you here because of your skill and your talent?
Exactly.
Or are you here because the government said you had to be let in?
I'm here because there's only 200 black people in Idaho. And
they let you in.
So I think part of the problem here is we have some short-term pain going on. We have, Facebook and Twitter and those guys are not being, there's no transparency there.
No.
They're obviously being even hypocritical in their current application of their own standards, right?
Right.
But I don't want the government to step in the short-term pain, because I believe in the long run, the free market figures these problems out. You know what I'm saying?
It does. I feel these guys have gotten so powerful that I'm not sure it's going to work this time. I mean, basically, they made all this fuss about the Russians tampering with the elections. Yeah. Here's Google, who is willing to help China censor dissidents, messing with our elections by making sure that conservative voices are dialed down until 2020, which is what they're doing.
Right. And Google had a contract with China that they were going to create a search engine that was going to be controlled by China.
Really?
Yes. Which is going to be controlled by the Chinese government.
That's because they want in China, though.
I know, right. There's a billion people in China. I get the play.
Yeah.
But their slogan used to be "Don't be evil," and they just dropped the "don't." They just say, more condensed.
But part of this too, I think, is punishment for conservatives for getting this field. The last 20 years, they've forgotten. Liberals have gotten into two things that's really messed up conservatives: education and tech.
Yeah.
Right, those two things have ruined conservative
and media.
Well, that's both.
That's the big three.
Yeah, right? absolutely. But tech is kind of,
and it also encourages. Talk about ruining people. It encourages this outrage mob behavior where I make a comment. This happened to me last week. I make a comment on Twitter, and it's worth it to them to come after me. Oh, that's an outrage. I'm outraged. Right. And then Twitter starts sending me these notes saying, well, you've been reported, and this time we're not going to do anything, but you have been reported again and again. I got like 50 of those.
Wow.
And then you start to think, well, should I send this tweet? It chills speech, basically. Yeah.
So it seems like necessarily, I think most of us here have kind of a strong libertarian bent.
Yeah.
Like, free market, free speech. And I really do. Yeah. At the same time, it seems to me that, it's inescapable though that there's still a morality.
Yeah.
Google has a morality. YouTube,
even in the freest. People, even hardcore libertarians will say, so long as it doesn't harm someone else. Right. Okay. But now you got to define harm.
Right.
Yep.
When is something harming you? So, like the squad, the axis of Sheevil, or whatever they were, was, they're talking about PTSD. And you've got this like victim culture.
Right.
And this, so you send out a tweet and it really hurt my heart, Andrew.
Right.
I know. It reminded me of something that happened when I was a kid.
Triggered him.
And it triggered me.
He started slitting his wrists.
Well, if you don't like it, you can leave. If you don't like it, you can leave. You can come back, maybe if you want, but
you just told me to go back where I came from.
But the thing about speech is normally it doesn't hurt you, like sticks and stones, right?
Yeah.
It
says who?
Well,
right?
That's the whole idea of free speech. there are such things as speech acts, like threatening somebody that hurts somebody, crying fire in
a crowded building.
Right? But those are very limited. That's a very limited sphere of speech. Most speech doesn't hurt you. If I say something ugly, stupid, hateful, you walk away, or you say it back to me, whatever. We should
My
be adults.
better than yours.
Yeah, well, you got me there. I'm going to cave. I'm
dig
caving on the beard.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to poke at him.
Yeah. What about we're in the trans insanity moment.
This is a perfect example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or the drag queen story hour.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you've been talking about this on your show. I confess I haven't been listening, but is that grooming little kids?
Yes, of course it is.
And should that be legal?
I would say some of the stuff I've seen should not at all be legal. I think we've abandoned our children entirely. But
but
message.
Push the button. But that's the thing that I'm talking about. Some of that stuff that we're talking about though is like seriously harming children.
Yes.
And children don't, you say, you insult me or, where I came from.
Yeah.
And, I can walk away or sticks and stones or whatever. But for kids.
Well, children are a protected class. There's no question.
Exactly.
About it.
But, and so it seems like society then has to make judgment calls at various points and say, okay, this book, maybe about Mormonism, telling the story of Joseph Smith, I disagree with. I don't think it's right, but I'm not going to say you have to outlaw all a picture book about Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's a story about the beauty of transgenderism or the beauty of having an older male lover for her little boy.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this is harming society. This is harming. And so I think sometimes libertarianism doesn't have brakes on it.
Yeah.
Like on abortion, I've watched him cave. A lot of libertarians cave on abortion.
I don't even understand that argument. I get this all the time. Yep. They'll say, you're a libertarian. How can you oppose abortion? But I oppose murder too. I oppose killing. I don't see how it's libertarian to let a baby get killed.
Well, because they don't acknowledge the baby and they just say my body.
Right. But my point though is even with the transgender stuff that's coming down, and the grooming that's happening in was it California public schools now, or basically just, are giving this, kindergartners, young kids, these lies, encouraging them to think of gender as fluid, it's not fixed, male and female, marriage can be whatever you want it to be, all this kind of thing. And I think we have to, I think conservatives' Achilles heel is that we have to recognize that really we have to have a standard to appeal to. And the standard of freedom, the standard even of freedom of speech is ultimately got to be grounded somewhere. Yeah. And as a Christian, I'm going to say that's grounded in the Bible. Yeah. That's grounded in the fact that Jesus died and rose again and is in heaven, seated at the right hand of the Father.
And everybody's got a Bible.
But if you don't have that standard, another standard's coming.
Well, there isn't a better one.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, that's why. That's why I'm a Christian.
Politics with Andrew Klavan next.
When a medical need arises, hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation care for one another by sharing financially for those medical needs. Samaritan members pray and reflect God's love and care by providing for one another. While times continue to change, God's love doesn't. He cares for us as we are called to care for one another.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
I'm telling you. Yes, I do.
Andrew, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Seriously.
It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, seriously.
We're wearing him out. They say he's already spoken twice this morning.
I hope so.
He's got another panel tonight.
Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. If you're not a member, what's wrong with you people?
Real.
And with us in the studio, we are so grateful to have Andrew Klavan. Thank you for putting up with us. And especially thank you for putting up with Gabe.
That was a little tough.
Yeah.
He's grown gray beard since we've been hanging out.
I was 27 when I got here.
All right. I'm gonna start off. I want to read you guys something.
Okay.
A little story time. I picked up this from an article in Front Page Magazine by Mallory Millett. Now, Andrew, do you know who Kate Millett is?
Yes, I know who Mallory. I know Mallory quite well, actually.
Do you know Mallory? Yeah. Okay, so maybe you're familiar with the story. On September 1st, 2014, Mallory Millett wrote this in an article from Front Page Mag. Quote, "It was 1969. Kate, her sister, invited me to join her for a gathering at the home of her friend, Lila Karp. They called the assemblage a, quote, consciousness-raising group, unquote. A typical communist exercise, something practiced in Maoist China. We gathered at a large table as the chairperson opened the meeting with a back-and-forth recitation, like a litany, a type of prayer done in Catholic Church. But now it was Marxism, the church of the left, mimicking religious practice." And so now she reports what they were saying back and forth. "Why are we here today?" she asked. "To make revolution," they answered. "What kind of revolution?" she replied. "The cultural revolution," they chanted.
Oh.
"And how do we make cultural revolution?" she demanded. "By destroying the American family," they answered. "How do we destroy the family?" she came back. "By destroying the American patriarch," they cried exuberantly. "How do we destroy the American patriarch?" she replied. "By taking away his power." "How do we do that?" "By destroying monogamy," they shouted. "How do we destroy monogamy?" And this is Mallory commenting. She says, "Their answer left me dumbstruck, breathless, disbelieving my ears. Was I on planet Earth? Who were these people?" And their answer was, "By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality," they resounded. Then they proceeded with a long discussion on how to advance these goals by establishing the National Organization of Women, NOW. It was clear they desired nothing less than the utter deconstruction of Western society. The upshot was that the only way to do this was to, quote, invade every American institution. Everyone must be permeated with, quote, the revolution. The media, the educational system, universities, high schools, K through 12, school boards, etc. Then the judiciary, the legislatures, the executive branches, and even the library system.
Wow.
That's heavy.
And so my question, this is all leading up to a question, is So did they succeed?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, I think this is what I've been yelling at conservatives about for 15 years, to blank looks mostly.
Yeah.
It was really, I think, when Reagan got elected, when they realized that they didn't own the electorate, they infiltrated every level of our culture.
Yeah.
The entertainment media, it's very, very hard to get work now if you're an open conservative.
Yeah.
Entertainment, publishing, all the arts.
All of it.
Universities, we know what's happening in universities.
Yes.
I mean, guys show up. I show up to just give my mild-mannered speech condemning everything they believe in. And they start screaming. These are the places where consciousness is formed.
Yeah.
And the academy, the news media is the other one.
Yeah.
So this is the place where it's formed. But I don't blame them. I blame us. I mean, why wouldn't you do that if that's what you believe? If you believe that the American family should be destroyed, if you believe that American capitalism, freedom should be destroyed, why wouldn't you infiltrate the culture? The question is, why did we let it happen, and why don't we fight back? And this is the thing that just drives me up the wall. When I would first walk out and do this, I would make these speeches and I would look at people, and I used to tell my wife it was like trying to explain to her that when you buy something on sale, it still costs money. Mm-hmm. You know, when I say that to my wife, she looks at me like, you're very cute, but I have no idea what you're talking about. You know? And that's the way they would look at me. Like, we like you. You're cool. You're from Hollywood. Yeah. But what do you mean? You know, isn't it about the 125th district in Ohio? Andrew Breitbart, this was his whole thing, you know, and I would call him up and complain, and he would just laugh and say, hey, this is my world, man, you know, because they spend all this money. It's like, if we don't win this district in Ohio, the Constitution is toast. And you think, start a movie company. You know, every woman's magazine, woman's magazine.
Where's his organ? Keep going.
No, every woman's magazine, every comedy show, right? I mean, comedy shapes people, especially young people. They love comedy.
Absolutely.
You know, two of my favorite comedians, a guy named Bill Burr, I think he is, Ricky Gervais. They're hilarious. They're both atheists. Mm-hmm. I was watching them thinking, boy, I can write jokes like that were pro-God, but you know who wouldn't laugh at them? Christians. because Christians think you're being offensive if you laugh with God, you know.
Well, Christians were the first snowflakes. And then
I think there's something fair to that. I do.
So I want to push this. I mean, you're preaching to the choir, man. And I think you're right. I think snowflakes. That was really good. Yeah. Can we get that like on a t-shirt or something? Christians were the original snowflakes.
Beer fluff joke.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, and Jesus said, you're the light of the world, right? He said, you're the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
And if the salt loses its savor, it's good for nothing.
Yeah.
To be cast out and trampled by men. And so,
and I want to add, I mean, this is just a passing comment. Let's not go here, but we've been in fights within the PCA, within the Southern Baptist circles, where we get chided for trying to tell the truth and rebuke brothers who are in serious sin.
Right.
With Pastor Greg Johnson and so forth. Because these guys, they just don't want to hear the truth.
Right.
I got called before I came here by a Christian news outlet.
Yes.
And they said to me, you know, you wrote the Gosnell film. There's profanity in that film.
Yeah.
But there's a guy cutting babies' throats in that film, buddy. You better there's profanity.
Yeah, seriously. And actually, the interview, the thing that I wanted to get to on all this is, so the one thing, you're preaching.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, and we're playing the organ and we're all there. And then I hear this thing about the homosexuality.
Yep.
And
Andrew.
I know.
And so my head is like kind of popping here.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, okay, here's this group of people doing this Marxist seance thing. And part of the goal of taking down Western civilization, the revolution, is getting homosexuality in everything.
Right.
And so my question is how could we possibly separate that from the cultural revolution, the sexual revolution?
You know, here's the thing. I'm a little bit, I know this sounds like a dodge, but it's not. I don't even understand why I'm supposed to care if another person is gay. If another person is gay and in a relationship with somebody he loves and all this, I don't understand why that's my business. I feel like I have so much sin on my heart that I'm trying to churn out and get rid of and hand over that I don't know why I'm supposed to talk to him about that, because I don't know what he's doing that hurts him or me.
But what if you knew that it was hurting him?
If I knew, now, see, there's so much gay evil where I come from, in Hollywood. There's so much passing boys around and infiltrating churches.
You know more than I do.
Running people out of business. You know, if they won't
if they don't consent to their agenda or whatever.
Right. So all that stuff I condemn as evil, and I have condemned it loudly.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder if somebody comes to you and says, look, I'm a gay person who is in love with this other person, and you cast them out of the church. Where do they go? Where have you sent them?
Yeah.
I mean,
so I'm a pastor, and somebody comes to me and says, I have these deep feelings. I'm attracted.
Wait, let me make it hard on myself here.
Yes.
I'm talking about a guy who says, I am not repentant. I take joy in this romantic relationship.
Yeah. Well, and so what I was going to say is, I mean, the step isn't, Jesus doesn't say, if you see your brother in sin, cast him out.
It doesn't go from 0 to 60.
It doesn't go from, so Matthew 18 is a passage where Jesus actually says, tells us how to deal with our brothers in sin.
Can I ask you something? Doesn't he say in that, if he sins against you, isn't that what it says?
That's where it starts.
That's what but I think it also says, if you see your brother sinning, this is in Luke, it says, if you see your brother sinning, rebuke him so that he will repent.
Leviticus 5 too deals with that.
And I think this is, loving your neighbor as yourself. I mean, this is, I think common sense. I mean, if you see your friend, doing something dangerous,
like voting Democrat.
Well, so Proverbs 27:5 says, "Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed."
Right. Which is a little bit about what we want to do with you.
So here's my question.
Yes.
If a sin is something that moves you further away from God, that's the way I think of sin, right? I've never committed a homosexual act. Like, it's not my thing, So I have no idea whether a person in that loving relationship is actually moving further away from God or is moving toward God from where he's been.
What about a pedophile?
Obviously abusing somebody. It's obvious abuse.
Yeah.
Consensual.
But you've never.
No, because a child can't.
But here's my point. So you've never experienced those things either.
Right.
But you can look at it and you can say, that's definitely moving somebody further away from God. And you're saying because of the harm.
Because of the harm, sure.
Right. But what if sodomy, anal intercourse?
Yeah.
I mean, y'all, Aaron, this is Andrew Klavan's show, so it's triggered. I mean, this is trigger warning. I'm sorry if there were kids watching,
Don't do that.
But
triggered.
But it's a scientific fact that disease is the rates of disease are spiked on sodomites.
Right.
The experience, all the earlier death, earlier higher suicide rates, and the disease and the amount of rectal cancer and all that kind of stuff.
But all right. So let me respond to the question with a question.
Yeah.
This person we already say this person is in a loving, committed, long-term consensual relationship, right?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that.
You wouldn't agree with that?
No, because I would define it as loving.
Yeah.
Because how the Bible talks about love is when you're in sin, that's not love. So, however, God's what defines.
All right, well, let's call it a romantic relationship.
Okay.
This is because the whole thing about gay people that I really believe is true is that they have feelings of romance toward people of the same sex, and that romance is one of the great consolations of life, right? So, I mean,
sure.
So somebody who has a romantic feelings to someone of the same sex is really different from me in kind.
Yeah.
That is different from me in kind, because if I had every minute I've spent thinking about women back, I'd be 27 years old.
But you know that our romantic feelings are not always right.
No, but let's say you've got some person and they're in this romantic relationship, and let's say it lasts forever. It lasts their whole life.
Sure.
And I've seen this before. And they come to you and you
Like
say,
once?
no, come on. Most of the gay people I know are conservative.
Yeah, well, I'm saying most of the gay people, though, it's a
That's because you're
notorious,
conservative.
it's a notorious community that tends to sleep around.
They're just a male homosexual. So
anyway,
then my question is, they say this to you and they say, yeah, well, we don't actually practice anal sex. We do other things. Then is it all right?
No, because I would say, I think it's in a sense better. I mean, it's not as harmful and not as sinful, because this most specific thing is sodomy. And so the law of God specifically says that you shall not lie with another man as a man lies with a woman. And that's an abomination. And in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul says, but he lists two actual words. One is sodomite or homosexual. The other is malakoi, which can mean the passive partner in sodomy, but it can also just mean effeminate.
Right.
And so the thing that I would push on in a situation like that is I would say as a pastor, now, in the beginning, God created man and woman, male and female.
Yep.
That's what God created for human flourishing.
There's no question that the male and female relationship is at the center of human life.
Yeah. And so my point though is that men though have an assignment from God by their biology to live as men. So when God created a man, he said, I know you, I made you, and I know what you're for. You're to be a man in this world.
Right.
And not a woman. And not pretend to be a woman, not to be soft, not to even be effeminate.
Yeah. But now, see, this is what bothers me, because I agree with you.
It's all right. Bring it.
Now, part of this is a much longer conversation that we don't have time for now about the way we read Scripture. We read it differently.
Sure.
And that's unfortunate because it makes it harder for us to communicate.
Yeah.
But let's just agree that looking at the book of life, never mind the book of Scripture, that obviously what you're talking about is the what's the word I'm looking for? The patent of life, the
pattern
template of life.
Okay.
This is the center of life. But life is very varied, and there are plenty of people, great people, who live outside that center. And my question is, when do we say that just being outside that center is evil? If a guy is a little bit fey and he's not necessarily Schwarzenegger, do we suddenly say, oh, this guy is evil? No, we say, he's a little bit, he's not a Superman, but
what if he's transgender? Is he still outside that in a comfortable realm?
My feeling about transgender people is, again, a kind of sense of indifference. What I'm opposed to with transgender people is they're insisting that we look at them as what they are not. Because that is just falsehood, and that is wrong.
See, what I would add to that, though, is that they're also mutilating their bodies.
Well, if somebody who's actually mutilated.
Yeah,
but I was talking about somebody who dresses up.
Just cross-dresser.
My feeling about that is, look, I think it's sad, and I think it's painful, and I feel bad for the person because I don't think there's a lot of happiness in there. But that's not my experience of a lot of gay couples. A lot of gay couples seem to be very happy and content within themselves. And I'll tell you something else. I suspect that they are not as happy as heterosexuals, but they're not heterosexual.
Yeah, but I think they are.
Jesse, I don't think you can support that.
Why do you say that, Toby?
Because God created male and female.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And so there's not 3 sexes, there's not 4 sexes, there's not 7 sexes. There's 2 sexes, male and female. And that male assignment from God or female assignment from God, I mean, it's like, not to be too crass, but it's like, a plug-in. You have a male and a female plug. Sure. And I know that, people think that's, man, you must be a redneck, but
no, of course.
I'm just looking at nature and I'm saying this is what God made. He made male and female, and your options are get married as a heterosexual couple or be single and chaste. But you don't have the freedom to do something else that God didn't design you for.
But when you think about, we're all guys here. When you think about how often you think about sex with women and you're talking to somebody who doesn't do that, there must be something different about them.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Okay.
No. Yeah. But I don't want to downplay the real experience of people. But what I would say as a pastor, though, is somebody comes to me and they're struggling here, and I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to say, you idiot, what's wrong? No.
I get that.
Because I understand that Christ died for these sins, and so I trust that the gospel is for this. And that goes, and you think about, people's predispositions, people, tend to be predisposed to alcoholism. Mm-hmm. If their parents were alcoholics or if it's in the family, people, I'm Irish, so I'm probably predisposed to being angry or something. I don't know.
Promiscuity.
Serious. But I'm descended from Adam. So do I have a lust problem? Descendants of Adam are tempted to sin in all kinds of ways. And that sin, the doctrine of original sin, which means that I didn't do anything. I was born in Adam in sin.
Right.
Which means I was born predisposed to all kinds of sins.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm still guilty. But the gospel, of course, is that Jesus died to set me free. So that I don't have to be slaves to that anymore. Yeah. But when you're a slave to sin, it's all that you know. And so, being, if a heterosexual, lust monkey, it's all you know. And why do we have pornography all over the place? Why do we have strip clubs all over? Yeah. Because people are lustful, and it feels good, feels right, feels fulfilling. They think they're happy. They think that's what they're made for.
That's not good for society.
But that's not good for them. It's not good for society. Yeah. And as a preacher of the gospel, I want to come to them and say, this is not what God made you for. I want to do that with compassion. I want to do that with patience.
So if these two people, I think it's not fair to define their experience away. I don't think it's fair if they come to you and say, we're in love and we have been in love for 30 years and we're together and we're happy, to say, well, that's not love. Because obviously love isn't love is one of those things that is created in the heart of the person having the experience.
But I also want to argue that love has an objective reality to it and not just a subjective reality.
I agree, but it's an objective reality that is created by the subjective. I mean, there are such things as experiences that are created by the person feeling them, right? If you can't have objective love that nobody feels.
Yeah, but I mean,
But I'm saying love is not just a feeling either. Love is sacrifice. Love is kind. Love is patience. Love is self-control. Right? There's some
love does no wrong.
There's some objective truth around it.
It is,
and inside there might be some feelings that you can experience within love, but it's defined by God's word. Because then, if we just leave it just to feelings, you know that culture goes, right?
No. But what I'm saying is that what you just described is perceived by the person, right? In other words, we don't when God says love your neighbor, you can't just love your neighbor. You can do all those things, but you learn to love
the thing that you said a minute ago that I just want to come back to is I don't want to define away experience either, but so there's a sense in which I want to recognize what people have experienced and I want to take them where they are because I believe that's what Jesus does.
That's right.
Jesus, Pastor Doug Wilson likes to say that God takes us where we are, not where we should have been.
That's right.
Which is really, but this is the thing. This is true of all of us. And the gospel comes and interrupts all of our experiences. The gospel comes to all of us and says, who you thought you were is a lie.
Yes, sir.
Because outside of Christ, we think we're awesome, cool, great, and we're depressed, and we're angry, and we got all kinds of confusion.
And we're on medication.
All this stuff, right? We got all kinds of brokenness, but fundamentally, we're at odds with God. And we've defined our world. We've created a world around that rebellion against God. We were objects of wrath. Right? We hated God. Paul says that when we were enemies of God, Christ died for us. And so the gospel actually, in a sense, dismisses all our self-definitions. You thought you were cool. You thought you were good looking. You thought you were successful. You thought you were a great husband. You thought you were a great father. And the gospel comes and shows you your sin and you look down in your heart and you say it's full of maggots.
Right. That is actually my experience. Yeah, what you're describing is my experience of coming to Christ, and a weirdly joyful experience.
Yes, right. But that's the thing, isn't
so horrible. Thank you, Jesus.
But again, a gay guy comes to me and he says, and remember, I really believe strongly in judge not lest you be judged, meaning do not judge another person's relationship to God. It doesn't mean you can't say you're doing something wrong, because obviously if you're holding up banks, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. But it does mean you can't judge another person's relationship to God. So the gay guy comes to me and he's in this long-term committed loving relationship or romantic relationship. And he says, yes, all that happened to me. And yet God has not said to me, I tell gay people the same thing I tell straight people. Take your sex life to God. I tell them all. I tell them all. I said, if God says to you, no, this is not what I want. And he will talk to you. He will tell you, do not do it. I will say this to straight people and gay people. But when they come to me and say, no, that's not what's happening. Where is the space for me? Where is there a space for me to act?
Two things. Matthew chapter 7, where you quoted, "Judge not, lest you be judged," is talking about hypocritical judgment and saying, "For the same judgment you will get for judging these others." Okay, so judge not, lest you be judged, and it's talking about hypocritical judgment. Secondly,
with the measure you use, it will be judged back to you.
That's what I was trying to finish it. Thank you. And then, but secondly, Christ constantly judged people's actions, and then he taught his disciples to go and do likewise. And then that's why you see Paul lambasting the Galatians for going after another gospel. You see,
or 1
Corinthians saying, "Such were some of you." So Paul is being like his teacher and going out and judging righteously. So there's the hypocritical judgment, don't do. And then Galatians chapter 6:1 says, "You who are spiritual, go and restore those who are not being spiritual." So first, you who are spiritual, that means get right with the Lord, pull your plank out of your own eye, get right with Jesus. And you who are spiritual, go and restore those who are not being spiritual. And so that's just part of the Christian life.
I think
and that's the only way we can actually really preach the gospel, is to be able to judge righteously.
But I think ultimately the answer to your question though is Scripture, is Bible. And you mentioned earlier we've got different views on how to read the Bible. Yes. But I think it's striking. Again, I go back to my original question because I'm thinking, man, Klavan is like, he's this Navy SEAL. He's like Rocky and Rambo like he's all these things about Western civilization, right? The good of Western civilization, which was built on an understanding that Scripture is the Word of God.
Yep.
And all the way up to, basically, in the last couple of decades, there were anti-sodomy laws on the books.
Yeah.
Why? Because of Leviticus.
Well, and it was bad. Yeah.
Right.
Because of Paul, what Paul says in 1 Corinthians.
But I remember when those laws were overturned.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that it probably wasn't constitutional to overturn them. I actually thought the states probably had the right to do that. But do you actually want to live in a world in which the police kick down the doors of gay people and arrest them? Because I grew up in a world in which a cop could walk into a gay bar, wait to be approached, and then arrest the guy who approached them. I don't know, man. I don't see where that is.
What I would argue for is the you have to have a warrant. All the normal limits of law.
Yeah.
But when you ask me, do I want to live in a world like that? I'm thinking a world where there's transgender story hour, a world where little boys are being groomed, a world where the sex trafficking is happening the way it's happening. Absolutely, I don't want to live in that world.
Right.
I want to live in a world that's normed by God's word. Absolutely, because you know what? I trust God more than I trust anything we can come up with.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff in our world that we think comes from. For instance, there's not a single sentence in the Bible. And you're going to kill me for this.
Okay.
Hey, hand me my stone back there. You got my stone? We're about to have a stone in live on Cross Politics right now.
For once, it's not a black guy.
Okay, we're ready.
There's not one sentence in the Bible that says you can only have one wife. I think it's in Timothy. He says that a bishop should have one wife.
Right.
Which suggests that everybody else had more.
Right.
Ephesians 5.
And Deuteronomy says that a king can't multiply wives, and you have Genesis 1, and Jesus quotes Genesis 1 in Mark 10, and talking about divorce.
In Matthew 19.
So there's a clear norm. But I actually agree with you, and I don't have a problem with saying that in some polygamy is preferable.
Well,
to other alternatives.
Are you sure you want your wife hearing you using that form of argumentation?
I just said.
I think polygamy is inherently abusive.
Absolutely, and I believe it's contrary to Christ and the church.
I think it's
contrary to God's way.
I don't think it's God's best.
Yeah.
In Exodus 21, Moses gives a law actually that says that if a man takes a second wife. Yeah. So he's just dealing with his culture where polygamy is just mainstream.
Rampant,
and he says, but if a husband takes a second wife and he diminishes the food, clothing, or marriage rights, sexual rights of the first wife is free to go. Which, all the people out there that are like Moses is misogynist, like read Exodus.
Yeah.
Seriously. That's better than you can get actually from the Supreme Court.
We can't get anything good.
But here's the thing: is that Jesus came to take one bride, and we're called to imitate Christ and take one bride.
Again, an interpretation, but
it's not an interpretation. It's what it says in Ephesians 5.
That's just Ephesians 5.
We didn't even stone him yet.
No, but that's okay. After the show, we just can't put that on camera.
Go out and get stoned.
I think Andrew's groupies are going to come after us now.
Andrew, you were doing so good, and then you just got to take it.
We're going to keep working on it.
We're going to work on you, brother. I'm going to send you some stuff. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God. Oh, actually, until Sunday.
Yeah.
Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Amen.
Thanks, Andrew.
That was a real pleasure. That was really fun.